All right. I was dreaming when I wrote this, so forgive me if I go astray when this beginning starts. But my name is Stephen Rabinowitz, and in 1999, when the Knicks made the NBA Finals last and played the Spurs, I was still worrying about goddamn Y2K. I thought the world was going to end at the end of the year. What were you two worried about, guys?
I'm Anthony Strait. I was 16, just finishing my second year in high school, and I was basically playing hooky for the most part. I am
Fair.
not going to lie. I was not a great high school student. I still graduated on time. And what was I doing the summer of '99? Oh yeah, I was my first job actually. I was working summer youth.
Nice. And Jay?
I'm Jay Kaplan, and to be honest, guys, I don't exactly remember where I was and what I was doing in 1999. Uh, Probably still in the minors as far as being in the publishing business goes, but I got to tell you, um, not soon gonna forget 1999. Cusp of a brand new century, the whole Y2K thing. Yankees winning the World Series, the middle of a three-peat. Knicks making it to the finals. 1999 wasn't a bad year to be a New York sports fan.
Yeah. By the way, the Mets got to the NLCS.
There you
Um,
go.
Pushed the Braves to a memorable six-game series. So yeah, it was a fun time to be a New York sports fan. On top of the fact that we were starting to see kind of we were starting to see kind of the football teams. You know, the Jets is coming off an AFC Championship game appearance, the Giants. But little did we know that '99 team was kind of set up for the 2000 team that went to the Super Bowl.
Hmm.
So there was a lot going on in the New York sports world in 1999.
All right, welcome
Yes,
to the
sir.
NBA Stanley Cup Final edition of On the Sports Lines. It's the final countdown da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da. For the NBA and NHL. Tonight we have three jam-packed segments about the two teams fighting for Lord Stanley's Chalice and Sir Larry O'Brien's Holy Grail, along with one rant about the half a century the New York Knicks have taken to get to a possible apex. If you hit up our Facebook and YouTube pages, both backslash on the sports lines, like and subscribe to both. DM me your favorite Nick of all time. I will be extra proud of you. I can't give you anything else. It doesn't mean that much, but still I'll be extra proud. Anyway, however, we must turn our attention to start off the show to a shocker trade that happened a little over 33 hours ago in the NFL, and I mean a shocker. Two-time Defensive Player of the Year, reigning Defensive Player of the Year, Myles Garrett, coming off a season where he set the single-season sack record, has been traded to the Los Angeles Rams for former Defensive Rookie of the Year, Jared Verse, and a bevy of picks, a first in 2027, the second in 2028, and a third in 2029. Thank God it was cyclical. According to Elias, this is only the third time the reigning Defensive Player of the Year is in new territory in 2026. Deion Sanders and Dana Stubblefield were the last two to do so. Those were via free agency. This is via giving away by trade. Anthony, thoughts? And wow.
I like to quote the late great Jim Fossil. The Rams are shoving all the poker chips to the table. Anybody wants in, get in. Everybody wants out, get out. The Rams are pretty much going for broke. That's literally the long story
Yeah.
short. You think about this, not too long ago, they traded for Trent McDuffie, the all-pro corner from the Kansas City Chiefs. So the Rams, I think they realized that Matthew Stafford is going to be 38 years old next season, and that the window of opportunity is closing a lot faster than they realized this. And they were literally in the Final Four just a few months back until they ran into a buzzsaw called the Seattle Seahawks in a stingy defense. But they're getting in Myles Garrett is clearly not just one of the best defensive players of all time. They're getting one of the best players of all time, period, regardless of position. He's only 30 years old. He's going into his age 31 season in the NFL. He's already has a Hall. If he retired tomorrow,
First ballot.
he would be first ballot Hall of Fame.
First ballot, hands down.
125 and a half sacks in 9 seasons with the Cleveland Browns, including a single season record 23 sacks last year. For the Rams, they give up a very good young defensive end, uh, and a first round pick that will be a late first round pick because there's no question the Rams are going to be a playoff team. Um, but this is definitely an all in move, and knowing that Stafford is only on due contract through the 2027 season, they were really on the doorstep of getting back to the Super Bowl, and you realize that you're getting probably the most dominant defensive man that we are seeing in today's NFL. And we've seen a slew of some great defensive linemen. I mean, just in the last decade or so. But this is a big, bold swing for a swing for the fences move for the Rams. And you got to think about this. The division they're in alone. You have the Seahawks, the defending Super Bowl champions, but you have the 49ers who think if I figure out their injury situation are just as good. Maybe they need to move the training facility, but that's another story for another day. But but the, the fact that they have to fight to come out of their own division in NFC West, just think about how much of a crazy race that was going into the final weekend of the season, where you had basically three teams fighting for a division title and home field advantage going into that final month of the season. So the Rams, look, this is a huge move. Definitely bolsters their defense without question. And look, I know there's the rumors of Aaron Donald possibly coming out of retirement. I want to take the word of Mrs. I want to take the word of Mrs. Aaron Donald, and yeah, put the kibosh on that one. But hey, Myles Garrett is a really good player, and the Rams are definitely going for it.
You mentioned Mrs. Aaron Donald before Mrs. Myles Garrett, Chloe Kim. So good for you for at least
Oh
holding
well,
at
well,
least for that
well, the Rams
beforehand. They'll
no
be close enough
winners,
for
that's for sure.
2028.
But keep in mind too, the Super Bowl is in Los Angeles, and this is almost a deja vu of how they the 2021 team was put together, and they traded for Matthew Stafford and they ended up in the Super Bowl and obviously a home game with the Invincible Trophy on the line. So this is almost mirror image a mirror of what they're trying to do for this team.
And I said another podcast earlier this week, the way I said it, when Al Michaels called the end of that Super Bowl, which was 4 years ago now, he literally said the word, this team was built for this time, this day, and this moment, and they're looking to do that all again. But Jay,
Yeah.
as a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, by the way, the other side, I'm sure Aaron Rodgers is very glad he will not have to face Myles Garrett twice in his last season in the NFL. I think also Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow would like to say a big thank you to Les Snead. But what does this do on the Browns side for this trade? A lot.
This is all Deshaun Watson's fault. Let's get this out of the way right
Yes.
here, right now. Nobody wants to trade Myles Garrett. No NFL GM wakes up one morning and willingly decides to get rid of one of the greatest players in franchise history and easily the best since the Browns made their return to the NFL in 1999. Something else that happened that year. This is simply the latest piece of collateral damage, courtesy of the unmitigated disaster that is the Deshaun Watson trade. GM Andrew Berry's big swing for a franchise quarterback disintegrated into $230 million guaranteed dollars worth of injuries. Watson's played in only 19 of 66 games from 2022 to 25. Disappointing on-field performance when he wasn't hurt. He averaged just 177 yards passing per game, just 6 yards per attempt, a passer rating of just 80.7, and a minus 35.86 EPA per play. A boatload of sexual assault allegations, which gave the organization a black eye and gave Watson an 11-game suspension. And oh yeah, they lost 3 future first-round picks. How does he still have a job? Oh, right. He works for the dumbest owners in the NFL and Jimmy and D Haslam. Look, I don't blame Garrett for requesting and then demanding a trade from a team that is so very far away from being a winner. He's been honest about not wanting to follow the career path of 10-time Pro Bowl, 6-time All-Pro offensive tackle Joe Thomas, who spent all 11 years of his Hall of Fame career in Cleveland and didn't have a winning season after his rookie year. Like any future first ballot Hall of Famer, he wants a Super Bowl title as the top line of a resume that's already filled with individual awards. He was never going to achieve that by staying with an organization that hasn't shown an ability to build a winner around him, as evidenced by the fact that Garrett has played just 3 postseason games over his 9-year career. The Browns have won 8 games over the last 2 seasons, despite all of Garrett's dominance, as evidenced by the fact that he had 5 sacks against the Patriots in Week 8 last season, and the Browns lost by 19 points. Was the final straw for Garrett seeing the organization hire former Ravens OC Todd Monken as the new head coach over Garrett's preferred choice of then defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz, whom the 2-time Defensive Player of the Year was very loyal to and who angrily resigned after Monken was hired? Maybe. The fact that Garrett did not participate in the Browns' voluntary offseason program and did not personally meet with Monken after his hiring is pretty telling. Then again, the final straw could also have been hearing that the team might be giving the QB1 job back to Watson, despite those flat-out awful numbers I noted earlier. The fact that, once again, the Browns seemingly have no plan for what to do at the sport's most important position has now cost them Myles Garrett. Quick aside, if I may, gents, selfishly, as a Steelers fan, I won't miss seeing Garrett terrorize my team's quarterbacks twice a season. Now I'll finish the rant. There's a crap ton of things Cleveland Browns fans can blame Deshaun Watson for since the trade landed him by the shores of Lake Erie. Now they can blame him for this one too.
I'm just to like put in a point here, Cleveland Browns general manager Garrett made the demand last year. Not sure if it was redemanded after he got the contract extension. There, it was
not
also
publicly,
not
there
publicly,
were rumors.
And denied by the GM of the Browns, Andrew Berry, earlier today.
Yes, but
course,
not denied by Garrett.
No,
not denied by Garrett.
No, but I'm just saying that was news to me when it was just said. I think it was more a lot with what had happened on just. They also thought there was a lot of movement of money being paid right before the season came out. That was a rumor in there. Obviously, the addition of getting an asset back helped out a little bit. One thing that's interesting in this whole thing is just the fact that the perception of the media is now all of a sudden we have to make sure that good players are not on bad teams anymore. And it's getting kind of annoying to me. I mean, yes, Cleveland is a dumpster fire. Yes, Cleveland is in a no-win situation right now, but Garrett signed that contract to be there, and less than a year later, he's gone. I feel like we're getting to the point where in football and sports, really, if your team is in that danger zone of being a bottom 8 to 10 team year after year, whether you're tanking or you're not, it almost seems like you have a lot of pressure to just constantly rebuild, and it is almost hard to get a star because you're not going to be able to get that star anywhere close to the promised land. So the NFL is not for long, but all of sports is not for long. Yep. It's kind of annoying to me specifically, but I can see where all of this is coming from. But I like the deal for it. By the way, you just take a look at that league. You have the oh shit faces coming from Brock Purdy, Sam Darnold, and whatever the hell will start for the Cardinals this year, being like, oh no, here's another weapon in the Rams backfield. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens in those last 3 weeks of the season, including the Christmas night beginning, the first matchup on Christmas night when the Rams play the Seahawks again, because it was those 2 games that decided not just the NFC, but the entire NFL last year, it seemed like, because those were teams 1 and 1A.
By the way, Jay, you mentioned Deshaun Watson. You're the Cleveland Browns. If you do that, what do you do with Shedeur Sanders? Because
there are the things that I'm hearing coming out of Cleveland is they are not firmly behind him, and they don't firmly believe he is the quarterback of the future. Yeah, there is noise coming out of that facility that they are not very high on him. And to be honest, look, I said it to you guys last year. There's a reason Shedeur Sanders fell as far as he did in the NFL draft. He's not an NFL quarterback. Could he carve out a career as a backup? Sure. So could Dylan Gabriel. Neither one of those guys, I'm sorry, is a QB1 in this league. You guys know what the bar is to be, even to use Rabbi's favorite term, to be a serviceable NFL quarterback. Neither one of those guys is above that bar.
Yeah, it said a lot too when I made the joke that Shador Sanders might be the most talented quarterback in that room, and
He still
that's not a
is.
good thing.
Still
That's not,
is.
that's
Still
not a
is.
good thing when you look at the quarterback
No.
depth chart.
No,
Yeah.
that's you know what they say. When you have three quarterbacks, you have none. Let's move on. Wednesday starts the NBA Finals. Tomorrow starts the NBA Finals between the New York Knicks and the San Antonio Spurs in a rematch of not only the 1999 NBA Finals, but of the NBA Cup Finals in December. Who the hell said that midseason tournament was meaningless? Not me! And now they meet with the ultimate prize at stake, the Larry O'Brien Trophy, which will be right on the court for everybody to see during the NBA Finals as a logo. All right, let's start with the champs of the East. I don't know if you've been living under a Rockefeller Center, but the New York Knicks are in the NBA Finals for the first time in 27 years. It is the 9th time that they've made the NBA Finals in the franchise's history, as they are looking for title number 3, would be their first in 53 years. Let's start looking with them. You know, the team that last lost had our NFL draft show, which was 39 days ago. 39. Actually, now it's 40 as of today. Since then, the Knickerbockers have won 11 straight playoff games. That is the third longest streak in NBA postseason history. Ironically, next up is the team that beat them in 1999, the San Antonio Spurs. They had 12, and then comes the Golden State Warriors with 15 in 2017. And if they sweep the never mind. Let's just talk about your Eastern Conference champs. All right, Anthony, we're going to start with you. Give me the Star Watch. It's pretty obvious for the Knicks going into the NBA Finals.
Yeah, it's well, as Mike Breen calls him, it's got to be Captain Clutch here. Jalen Brunson, the unanimous Eastern Conference Finals MVP. he averaged 27 points in that series to go with 6 assists. In the postseason, in the series, 25 points a game, 7.5 assists, 3 rebounds, shooting 48% from the field across that 4-game sweep of the Cleveland Cavaliers. Boy, has Cleveland had a tough couple of weeks, but that's just putting it mildly. But then you look back in that series and look back Jalen Brunson's postseason, to say the least. He was a catalyst of that comeback in game 1 when they were down by 22. Remember the speech he gave the team in that during that timeout, and he became kind of the spearhead of that charge. 38 points, 6 assists, hit the floater over James Harden to tie the game. Game 2 as well, career high 14 assists to go with 19 points. On a roll in game 3, dropping 30 points and 6 assists. Didn't have to do a whole lot in game 4 because the Knicks kind of ran away and put that game away really midway through that third quarter. But going back into the Sixers series as well. I mean, 35 points for 12 of 18 in game 1 against Philadelphia. Game 2, coming through in clutch time. Really the last close game the Knicks has played in the last month.
Yeah.
I mean, they won that game by 6 to go up 2-0. And in game 3, he scored 33 points. The Knicks pulled away in that game, and obviously the 3-point barrage we saw in game 4 of that series. Then you go back to really the start of this tremendous run. Was the game 4 against Atlanta. You saw that Jalen Brunson kind of went more as a facilitator, as a playmaker, setting up guys for his teammates. Setting up plays for his teammates, getting shots for everyone else. And then game 5 was the masterclass, scoring 39 points on 15 to 23 shooting. But what Jalen Brunson has done for this Knicks team and this franchise has been anything short of one of the best stories we've seen in a very long time, at least, especially not just in New York, but in sports in general. And seeing him, I mean, his leadership, he's very stoic. He's been more about his mantra being the magic is in the work. He's been very humble, shown a lot of humility. that we don't often see in star players. Especially in this market, I would think of Aaron Judge as someone, or even
Hmm.
Derek Jeter as someone who just, they're a star among stars, but certainly don't act that way. As they've had that team first mentality. Um, Obviously not afraid of the moment, and coming through in a clutch time and time again. And I'll talk about this later on when we talk about closing. The when you look back at this signing 4 years ago and how it was almost universally panned by virtually anyone who thought the Knicks overpaid for Jalen Brunson, and that may turn out to be probably one of the biggest free agent signings in NBA history. And the fact that the Knicks franchise turned around, they've been a playoff team ever since, but now they are
Yeah.
a finals team that are just 4 more wins. They got 12, and you notice after they swept the Cleveland Cavaliers, Karl Towns and Jalen Brunson pretty much said to each other, "We need 4 more." I mean, I think the mentality that, yeah, we're here, but we're not satisfied getting here, speaks volumes of a Knicks team that had a lot of growing pains in the last couple of years and some painful playoff losses. And Jalen Brunson's leadership has been really a catalyst of kind of taking that next step forward. And they just, start tomorrow night. Can they get 4 more wins against a very, very good San Antonio Spurs team that has arrived sooner than expected?
And what's going to be very interesting is to see the battle. Just he's going to probably be going up against Stefan Castle, who did a very good job holding SGA really under his average for most of that series. Game 7 notwithstanding, didn't get any help in that game, but it's been a masterclass for Brunson this entire postseason, and just think he hasn't even had to play any of the closeout games, fourth quarters in this
Nope.
entire series. Not a minute. All
Nope.
right, let's bring it over to the stat person on the mountain or in the Bronx. Jay, give me your statistical choice of preference, aka stat watch, going into the finals for the orange and blue.
The first stat I'm going to throw at you is 5, as in the number of players who are representing the Big East in this finals. 3 Villanova Wildcats on the Knicks. You guys know who they are. The Spurs have 1 member of my alma mater, St. John's, and a member of Rabbi's favorite team, the UConn Huskies, in Stefan Castle and Julian Champagne. So that's stat number 1.
Yes.
But
Number
the
one,
big
big one.
stat, which also has the number 5 involved, except this one is related to the Knicks starting 5 and their net rating, which has seen quite the turnaround since we first talked about it coming into the playoffs. And when we previewed the Knicks opening round series against the Hawks back in April, my stat watch angle looked at the Knicks starting 5 of Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby, and Karl-Anthony Towns. An uber talented group on paper that for some reason was one of the least efficient 5-man units in the NBA. They came into the postseason having played the second most regular season minutes, 541, of the 16 5-man units that played at least 250 minutes together. And they were just 0.9 points per 100 possessions better than their opponents over those minutes. Their 115 offensive rating was 14th. Their 112 defensive rating was 7th. Their plus 2.3 net rating was 14th. These 5 was the only 5-man unit in the association that had played at least 350 minutes together and did not have a double-digit plus positive net rating. I said that unless that number improved, the Knicks wouldn't go deep in these playoffs. And after the first 3 games of that opening round series against the Hawks, the Knicks were down 2-1. And the narrative that had plagued the Knicks starting 5 over the last 2 seasons did not show any signs of changing. Then game 4 happened. The Knicks won 114-98 and haven't looked back. During their current 11-game winning streak, which started in game 4 of that series and has seen them outscore their opponents by 262 points, that's an average margin of victory of 23.8 points per game. The Knicks starting 5 has posted an offensive rating of 123, a defensive rating of 107.8 for a net rating of plus 15.2. In the semifinal series against the Sixers, They posted a 137.9 offensive rating, a 113.3 defensive rating. That's a net rating of plus 24.6. In the conference finals against the Cavs, 115.2 offensive rating, 102.5 defensive rating. That's a net rating of plus 12.6. They've shown they can do it on with their offense. They lead all playoff teams in field goal percentage, 51.5, 2-point percentage, 58.5, 3-point percentage, 40 even. They're the only team above 38.5%. And assists, 26.7 per game. And their 124.5 offensive rating is number one in the NBA in the playoffs. The Spurs are number three at 116.5. And their defense, whose 104.4 defensive rating, is also number one in the NBA in the playoffs. Spurs are number two at 106.1. That's an overall net rating of plus 20.1, far and away the best in the NBA in the playoffs, and is almost double that of the Spurs, who are number two with a net rating of plus 10.4. Coming into the NBA Finals, the Knicks starting five of Brunson, Hart, Bridges, Anunoby, and Towns have been on the floor together for 204 minutes and 22 seconds in the playoffs and are at plus 8.5 points per 100 possessions better than their opponents. I'd say that's more than a wee bit of an improvement. And if they can keep that up against the Spurs, this rematch of the 1999 Finals will end very differently.
Yeah, and it's also in a full season too. So it's just insane how this starting lineup has been the catalyst to everything, even though they haven't needed to be on the court as much. And even in that game one win, Hart wasn't there most of the game because they needed shooters on the court. And that leads me to my X factor, and that is Landry Shamet. When you talk about a team when you talk about this series, no matter who the Knicks would have ended up facing, the Thunder or the Spurs, the one thing that they're going to need is bodies. And that's something that Tom Thibodeau didn't do or couldn't do last year.
Couldn't or wouldn't.
I think it's more the wouldn't situation.
Yeah.
And now there's been a lot of people who have come off of the bench and have been stars for this team in the limited amount of time that they've had. And one of those is Landry Shamet, who has appeared in many games of his career, 64, coming off the bench in almost all of them. He's a 37% shooter in the playoffs. And it's kind of funny. You remember he was brought in the beginning of the season in a veteran's minimum contract, suffered a shoulder injury. They decided to keep him. And do you remember who was about to be on this team? Malcolm Brogdon, who, by the way, the first that I've seen this year is Malcolm Brogdon, 2019, traded from the Bucks. 2 years later, wins the finals. 2021, 2022, traded from the Pacers. 3 years later, makes the finals. 2023, traded from the Celtics. 1 year later, wins the finals. And now they let the spot open for what could be a magical run. But getting back to Landry, it's an interesting dynamic in seeing what he did in that Eastern Conference Finals. In this postseason, he's shooting 55.3% from the field and 60% from deep, and averaging 5.7 points in just 13 minutes per postseason game. Shot an insane 91.7% on three-pointers in the Eastern Conference Finals. 11 of 12, last 6 games, 17 of 21. That is 80.1%. Hardly used last year. We know why. But he has had some big-time performances, early in the year, and has just been a beast out there as Jay drops off for a second, so we'll just keep going. And it's just been really insane to see the maturation of Shamet into what has become just a decent bench player off a team that right now is going to need to go 9, 10, 11 deep in this postseason. I think you can pick a lot of players as X factors. The only reason I'm picking Shamet is the fact that threes are better than twos, they say in the league. And what Shamet does is just hit the three better than a lot of people in these playoffs and can provide an instant spark. He did it in the comeback in game 1 against Cleveland. He did it to punctuate the finale in game 4. Does it again. All you need is one big performance to make yourself a postseason legend or a finals legend. And Shamet can certainly do that, guys.
Yeah, and we look at the Knicks, not just the starters, but the bench. They have guys who can shoot, but they can defend too. I think that's been one of the biggest strengths of this Knicks team. It's not just the depth; it's the fact that their wing players can defend and play defense as well. So you're not losing. There's no real drop off when you have to sub guys in and out. If you have to sub out Bridges, if you have to sub out Josh Hart, if you have to sub out OG Anunoby. You think about this. Haporti got a couple of minutes in the Sixers series because of Carlton Towns foul trouble and was able to hold up his end against Joel Embiid. We haven't seen Giannawa at all. And keep in mind, he hurt the Spurs earlier this season
In that
in one
game,
of the regular
that
season
Sunday
games
game, yeah, he was their main contributor off the
be-
bench.
because he's an outside shooter. If you get Tyler Collette as a guy who helped the Knicks in that NBA Cup game against the Spurs and was able to knock down a couple of big shots down the stretch in that game. So you think back and obviously the Knicks are underdogs in this series, and the Spurs are a good team. No, not taking nothing away from them whatsoever. But this matchup probably is the best thing that can happen to the Knicks because the Oklahoma City Thunder has the depth that would have given the Knicks some kind of fits. The Spurs maybe go 8 deep at best, and obviously now I'm talking about Victor Wembanyama in our next segment. Um, the Knicks can throw bodies at the Spurs wing players who are smaller, at least as far as listed size, on the court, and it'll be an interesting chess match to see what Mike Brown does as far as mixing and matching, with the Spurs best wing defender players. Obviously, Victor Wembanyama is a different animal, a different alien in himself, to say the least.
Speaking of we come in peace, let's talk about the San Antonio Spurs. This is the Western Conference champions now. The San Antonio Spurs back after a 12-year absence from the NBA's Ultimate Series. Note their in their past six previous final appearances, which all came in a 15-year span, they're 5-1, and they were a Ray Allen miracle of three from being 6-0. Let's talk about the best of the West, and Anthony, the alien has arrived. He comes in peace, and he's about to bring it to the world's biggest stage in the NBA Finals.
Yeah, by the way, another stat, the Spurs have never lost a game one of an NBA Finals. So that is
Really?
a
That's
that is a
right.
very that is very important going into game one tomorrow night. And the Knicks, for the first time in this postseason, not having a home court advantage and going into the series. But Victor Wembanyama, the Western Conference Finals MVP and well deserved, 22-year-old averaged 27 points a game, 10 rebounds, 10.9, almost 11 rebounds a game, and close to 3 blocks against the Thunder in that 7 game series win. Joining LeBron James, Kobe Bryant is the only players aged 22 or younger since 1957 to lead a final bounce team in postseason scoring. Became the first player in NBA history to record more than 50 blocks and 25 three-pointers in a single postseason run. It started with a 35-point performance against the Portland Trailblazers in round one. It continued with a block party in game one against the Timberwolves in round two. Single game playoff block record 12 by Victor Wembanyama. It continued into the Western Conference Finals. Obviously, the 41 point, 24 rebound masterpiece we saw a couple of weeks ago in game one. Actually, during our last show, that game was going on in real time. Also, down 3-2 against the Oklahoma City Thunder. He, 28 points, 10 rebounds, and a lopsided game six victory. Game seven, despite being in foul trouble, um, the Wembanyama and the Spurs defense was able to shut down the rest of the Oklahoma City Thunder supporting cast. Obviously, we talked about it before the show. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander had a great game seven, but didn't get much help, and we know about went on with Chet Holmgren in that game. But Victor Wembanyama has been just an amazing player on both sides of the court. When you think back to the games that the Knicks have played against the Spurs, they played three, obviously, and the Knicks winning 2 out of 3, including the NBA Cup championship game. They really did a good job of trying to keep Victor Wembanyama out of his spots. Obviously, they have the bigs with Carlton Towns and Mitchell Robinson, who was listed as a questionable going into game one, but I don't know if you saw the footage. He was practicing without a cast on, so who knows what happens. He more likely be a game time decision for game one. They're going to need the bigs, obviously. And I mentioned Hapoidi being another guy off the bench that the Knicks can throw. But another guy too who's interesting is OG Anunoby, because Anunoby, despite the 6'7" body, he's a big small forward. And he has success in the two Knicks victories of Body and Victor Wembanyama, keeping him out of his comfort zone, keeping him away from the basket as much as possible. But also, what it does too is he has the size and the speed to keep up with Wembanyama's footwork. I mean, that's for a guy who's 7'5". You don't see too many guys who can play like a guard at that size. So Victor
Hmm.
Wembanyama definitely can pull that off. On the flip side of it, what the Knicks need to do is one, they have to knock down the outside shots. The most important thing is they gotta get Victor Wembanyama away from the basket, even by picking and rolling with whoever the guy he's defending, which more likely they're gonna put him on Josh Hart, because Josh Hart is kind of the non-scorer in the next starting five. It backfired on the Cavs for tackling in game two, but it did work in game one because Josh Hart did struggle from outside. That's one thing, but also being able they're gonna knock down the shots, get him on the screen and roll, attack him on switches. And this is where you see Brunson, you see Bridges, and maybe Josh Hart and Anunoby being able to knock down those mid-range jump shots. Remember, you go back to the Philadelphia series around two, and how they were able to get Joel Embiid on those pick and roll switches, and with Embiid sagging off and kind of playing rim protector, that left open a lot of those mid-range shots that Brunson's like to take, that Bridges like to take as well. This is the same situation here with Wembanyama, because the Spurs are more focused. They play similar to the Knicks defensively in the fact that they'll give up the three-pointer to protect the paint, but Wembanyama kind of playing a free safety. So that's one of the things you do, that you attack the mid with the mid-range jumper. If they switch to the zone, obviously Wemby being the middle guy, that kind of opens up the paint a little bit because of the 3-second rule. He can't be in the paint all the time. That gives the Knicks the opportunity to kind of look for those backdoor screens that they've been successful in. They've been running the offense through Karl-Anthony Towns, and if the Spurs do put a small, this is where the Spurs have an issue. If you put Wembanyama on Towns, there's a chance Wembanyama could get into foul trouble. But more importantly, that also opens up a lot of the backdoor screens that the Knicks have been killing their
Yes.
opponents on. If you put a small on Karl-Anthony Towns, Towns is just gonna pick and pop and shoot over this guy and even play bully ball. So the Knicks' depth and overall the way they've been playing offensively kind of put the Spurs somewhat in a bit of a tough situation, because Victor Wembanyama, he can't camp on the court in the paint forever. But at the same time, if you're knocking down your shots, it basically turns it into a 4-on-5 situation defensively. So the Knicks have to do what they were able to do in the NBA Cup, but also in that regular season game, and also the game they lost to San Antonio by two. They have to knock down the outside shots, but attack Victor Wembanyama. Regardless, if yes, he's gonna get he's gonna get his block shots. He's gonna deter a lot of shots because that's like a 7'5" big would do, but you have to go after him. And if you don't do that, you're making life easier for the Spurs defensively. And more importantly, Victor Wembanyama, who does well down if you're attacking him, because that takes away from the offensive side. And that was in the three losses against the Thunder. You can't let Victor Wembanyama off the hook offensively if you're not going after him defensively and wear him down through four quarters.
What's interesting is what you're just saying. I believe that first game against in the NBA Cup, Wembanyama was in the second game back from injury, so he was on a minutes restriction in that game. Played 25 minutes, was 7 of 17, but needed to be kind of selective of where he's being put in there. I kind of like what you're saying, but I think they would rather take the chances against Cat. I think they'll worry about the screens later because if they can get Cat into foul trouble, and this is where Mitch is going to be very important. if they can kind of get Cat into foul trouble and leave it as a Mitch versus Victor game, they're going to take their chances on that. You just opened up a good point. You might see a little bit of puck porting in this series just so you can take two or three hits that other players will not be able to take, because you get Victor off of the court, you have a different ball game, which we'll talk about in just a moment.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of, well, let's not talk about that for a moment. Let's talk about defense, Jay. Spurs stat watch.
Yeah. And for me, this is kind of an easy thing. It's the Spurs defensive efficiency versus the NBA as compared to versus the Knicks. Led by Defensive Player of the Year Victor Wembanyama, the Spurs are one of the best defensive teams in the NBA. They were number 3 in defensive efficiency during the regular season, allowing just 111.3 points per 100 possessions, and are number 2 coming into the playoffs, allowing just 106.1 points per 100 possessions. The problem is they're going against a Knicks team that has had their number during the regular season. Knicks took 2 out of 3, including as that NBA Cup final that Rabbi alluded to at the top, with offensive ratings of 128, 126, and 117 in those 3 matchups. The first 2 would have led the association by a wide margin, and the third would have ranked in top 10. And as I noted in the previous segment, the Knicks are also shooting the lights out from everywhere right now coming into the finals. The Knicks lead all playoff teams in field goal attempts per game in the paint, 29.6, are converting them at a 68.1% clip. They also lead all playoff teams in points in the paint per game, 53.3, and are 5th in free throw rate at 0.307. But the Spurs defense, with Wemby patrolling the paint, doesn't allow that type of production in the paint. In the first 2 rounds of the Western Conference playoffs, the Oklahoma City Thunder shot 75.6% in the paint. In the Western Conference Finals against Wemby and the Spurs, that number dropped to 54.4%. So as dominant as the Knicks have been, the Knicks offense has been getting points in the paint so far, chances are they're not going to have that same level of success attacking the basket against Wembanyama. Then again, with the Knicks using Karl-Anthony Towns as the hub of their offense since Game 4 against Atlanta, Wemby may have to step out to the three-point line to guard Cat, which could create some easier paint touches for OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges, who won't have to worry about an alien protecting the rim, as long as Cat can get the ball past Wemby's go-go gadget arms and into the hands of his cutting teammates. If he can't, then the Knicks are going to have to be proficient and efficient from beyond the arc. And so far, they have been. The Knicks have made at least 10 threes in 12 of their 14 playoff games. And as noted, they are shooting an NBA best 40% from beyond the arc in the playoffs. It's been a team effort. 7 players taking at least 2 threes per game in the playoffs. 3 players, Cat, OG, and Deuce McBride, converting it better than 42%. And Josh Hart is the only one not knocking his threes down at least a 34% clip. This level of success is not a complete fluke, as during the regular season, they were 4th in the association, knocking down their threes at a 37.3% clip. They went 39 for 100. That's 39% from 3 in the final 2 regular season game against the Spurs. And their 5-out offense, with that spacing, creating those open looks from beyond the arc, was a problem for San Antonio. The thing about the Spurs defense, which is number 1 in the NBA in the playoffs in field goal percentage allowed at just 41.3, 2-point field goal percentage allowed at just 46.8, and they're number 3 in 3-point percentage allowed, 32.9, is just how different it is when Wembanyama is on the floor versus when he's off the floor. When he's on, opponents take just 24.2% of their shots at the rim and convert them at a 55% clip. When he's off, the percentage of their shots at the rim jumps up to 36.1%, and that conversion rate jumps up to 59.1%. When he's on, opponents take 41.7% of their shots from 3 and convert them at a 30.9% clip. When he's off, their percentage of shots from beyond the arc rate drops to 33.9%, but the conversion rate jumps up to 36.4%. The Knicks' Jalen Brunson-led offense is the irresistible force. The Spurs' Victor Wembanyama-led defense is the immovable object. Chances are they can slow the Knicks' offense down when the alien is on the floor. The question that will determine whether the Spurs take home their 6th Larry O'Brien trophy is what their defense does or does not do when that 7'5" Frenchman is off the floor.
Yeah, and before I kind of get quickly into Luke Cornett and his effect this postseason, kind of going on your fact, this is from NBA.com. John Schumann, who was talking about in these playoffs when Victor Wembanyama has been there to protect the rim. Opponents have shot 44 of 98, which is 44.9%. When Luke Cornett's been there, it's also been pretty bad too. It's 45 for 99 for 45.5%. Those two best rim protection marks among those 14 players I'm sorry, the two best rim protection marks among 14 players who've defended at least 50 shots at the rim in the playoffs. And if that continues, it is the third and fifth best marks in the last 10 years. Oh, yeah. And Victor Wembanyama has 60 total blocks this postseason. The only person who's done more in a single postseason is Tim Duncan, and he had two more than that, 62 in 2007. So he gonna break that record. I'm telling you right now. Luke Cornett is my X factor. It's not a deep team, the Spurs, as we've talked about. They don't go deep at all. So really, what I'm worried about, if I'm a Spurs fan, is what happens in those minutes when Victor Wembanyama is not on the court. We kind of saw that in Game 7, didn't we? In those last minutes where they needed to rest Victor for even a short period of time, 2 minutes, even in the biggest moment. And then the Thunder were taking the ball 97-91, about 6.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Isaiah Hartenstein was about to drive down the basket. It was going to be a 4-point game. No, it wasn't. It turned out to stay as a 6-point game as Cornett got a chase down block. Something that he's joked about is now going to be put in the same realm as that LeBron James block from 2016. Slow your roll, Luke. You still got a little ways to go, but it was one of the bigger blocks and probably the biggest play of the game. Cornett, by the way, has had a damn good run. He became a trade deadline move into Boston in 2021, made the NBA Finals in 2022, continued being a bench player in that team, was part of that 2024 championship team where he played 63 games in the regular season, 13 in the playoffs. 24-25, he had 6 points, 5.3 rebounds over 73 games played, started 16 times. Hasn't done as much this year. He's kind of been has been kind of doing not even about 20 minutes a game. He has had a 30-minute per game this postseason. Game 3 against the Blazers, where he scored 14. That's as high in the playoffs, but it's really winning, not even winning the minutes, surviving the minutes without Victor Wembanyama on the floor. Because Wembanyama hasn't fouled out of a playoff game in his entire career, only fouled out of 2 games in his entire career overall. And we saw when Wembanyama had the issue with the elbow in game 4 of the Western Conference semifinals, that game obviously turned on the dime because as much as the Spurs are a very talented team, and yes, they deserve to be the favorite in this series, although very slightly. They're the younger team. And they are very likely the team who is not as deep. So you take off any point of the stake, they ain't win. They're probably not winning this series. And I think keeping Victor Wembanyama on the floor is huge. But again, just surviving the minutes without him on the floor is huge. It happened when Nikola Jokic won the title in 2023. Had to make sure when Jokic was not on the floor, it was almost a net. It was almost a net, not negative, but not necessarily just flattened out. You got to make sure when the big man stays on the court, the lead stays the same. He's going to be playing 35 to 40 minutes a game. That's what he should be doing. It's those minutes when he's not on the court because Victor's still a little brittle. Victor's still young. Victor was on the minutes restriction pretty much for all of 2025's portion of the season before getting to 2026. That's the point when I think the Spurs that can make them a title team. As long as they can keep Victor Wembanyama on the court for as much time as they possibly can, and even when he's off the court, survive. Just survive without him.
By the way, a couple of notes too. Myles Garrett and Andrew Shamet did not play in any of those 2 regular season matchups against the Spurs, nor the NBA Cup, and the Knicks did not have Jose Alvarado in those games either. So
they had him in the second. They had him in
the
the second game.
Second
They had him in the second game.
But it'd be interesting to see because the Knicks need the outside shooter, how much of a role, how much of an impact McBride and Shamet is going to have. And also just how much Alvarado, as far as defensive pressure, especially we know that he pressures the ball in the backcourt, how much he can able to at least slow up the Spurs. The Spurs have had a really hard time not turning the ball over. Even when De'Aaron Fox has been in the lineup, they turn the ball over a lot. I think the Knicks know that. They did a good job of forcing the Cavs into another turnover-prone team into making a lot of mistakes. How much is that going to play into as well? But also too, it's slowing down the offense and making the Spurs work with a later shot clock. The Knicks one of the best offensive teams with the shot clock winding down. The Spurs, not nearly as much, especially if you have to run it through Wembanyama or Castle or any of these other or even Dylan Harper, and they have to force up a shot late in the shot clock. So yeah, it's going to be a really compelling series. I think it's going to go at least six.
It
I think
should,
you're not
yeah.
going. I think you're not going to ask me who I'm rooting for. That's pretty obvious. But I think it's going to be a really interesting chess match between the two teams. Both head coaches done a tremendous job with these teams. And I can't wait to tip it off tomorrow night.
Yeah, this is going to be fun to watch
Yep.
these two teams play. A lot of new blood in the NBA Finals, which is going to be fun. I think ABC kind of prayed for this, and it happened. They have a star-studded NBA Finals starting tomorrow night in San Antonio. Let's move on to the ice. Well, Lord Stanley's chalice is not in the house. I'm not wearing the gloves to handle it if it was, those nice black gloves. But let's
Well,
talk about the
well,
two teams that are vying
correction,
for it.
correction. Los Angeles Challenge did make a cameo appearance
Yeah, it
before
did.
the start of game
It
one
did. It
tonight.
did before the game one, but it's not in this house. It's not in this
No.
house currently right over here. So let's talk about the two teams that are currently vying for it and about to head game one, possibly the Vegas Golden Knights and the Carolina Hurricanes. Both are in their third Stanley Cup final. This is the ninth season for the Golden Knights in existence. So that's one out of every three seasons that they played for the Cup. This is season number 46 for Carolina. Remember the days of Hartford, so do the math. That's one out of every 15 and a third seasons that they've played for the Cup. You know, same franchise growth. Let's start with the Hurricanes, who are just a casual, soon to be 12-2 this postseason. Five of those games won in OT, but their last two wins before their eventual loss in about a second tonight have been the most dominant in a 4-0 and 6-1 win against the Montreal Canadiens in the Eastern Conference Finals. Jay, you're first up. Install if you want before this game is over, but the Carolina Hurricanes will
I
lift
mean, we've
up the
only
Stanley.
got
We only got
5.6
5 seconds, but I'm
seconds,
not going to
so.
sell it anymore. So the Carolina Hurricanes will jump off of this 1-0 deficit that they currently have and lift up the Stanley Cup if
They get regular season level production from Sebastian Aho and the number one line. The Carolina Hurricanes have long been the epitome of a team under Rod Brindamore. They've been more about depth than star power, and this season is no different. That being said, Sebastian Aho is the closest thing the Cavs have to an elite player, and his line mates, Andrei Svechnikov and Seth Jarvis on the Canes' number one line, need to bring their A game if the Canes are to bring Lord Stanley's chalice back to Raleigh for the first time since 2005, 2006, when their head coach was their captain and the Selke Award winner as the NHL's best defensive forward. Aho, Jarvis, and Svechnikov were the top three goal scorers during the regular season and were 1, 3, and 4 on the team in point. They accounted for 31% of all goals scored by the Hurricanes during the regular season and 37% of all goals scored by forwards. Among all line combinations that played at least 325 minutes together during the regular season, they were 11th in expected goals percentage at 56% and number 3 in expected goals for at 30.6, and were a big reason the Canes were the second best team in the NHL at 5-on-5 in terms of expected goals percentage and expected goals for. Overall, that's carried through for the Canes in their run to the Stanley Cup Finals, as they've led all playoff teams with a 60.07% expected goals percentage and a 34.9 expected goals for. But they've done it with middling production from their number one line. In their 132 minutes of ice time, Carolina has been outscored 3-2. None of their other lines have been outscored in their minutes and posted an expected goals percentage of 46.7 and a paltry 0.91 goals per 60 for their number one line, while their other three lines are at 59.7%, 67.4%, and 71.2% in expected goals percentage and 2.29, 2.71 and 4.85 goals per 60, led by the Logan Stankovic and Jackson Blake Taylor Hall line, which has that 71.2% expected goals percentage and 4.85 goals per 60, both of which are tops in the playoffs. Aho, Svechnikov, and Jarvis have been on the ice together for just one 5-on-5 goal by the Hurricanes in their first 10 playoff games. They've improved that somewhat with even strength goals over the last 3 games of the Eastern Conference Finals, but they're still scoring nearly 2 fewer goals per 60 than they did in the regular season. They're generating chances at a similar enough rate, but they're just not lighting the lamp as often. They've combined for just 10 of the team's 42 playoff goals scored. None tonight, by the way. Granted, with the way Stankoven's line and Captain Jordan Stahl's line has been producing, Carolina was able to sweep Ottawa and Philadelphia despite Aho's line not putting up their usual level of production. But it's not going to cut it in the Stanley Cup Finals against the type of playoff-tested, high-end talent such as Mitch Marner, Mark Stone, and Jack Eichel that Vegas can bring to bear. Those three, who are likely to be spread throughout Vegas's lineup, along with Pavel Dorofeyev and Brett Howden, who are tied for the playoff lead in goals with 10 apiece, can potentially negate some of Carolina's scoring depth, which will put more of the onus back on Aho, Svechnikov, and Jarvis. It comes down to this, guys. If the Canes want to be lifting Lord Stanley's chalice at the end of the playoffs, their top 3 can't play like their bottom 6. Not off to a good start, because they were on the ice for the second period goal by Vegas, which was scored at 5-on-5 by Marner's line, and what ultimately wound up being a 5-4 Game 1 loss for the Carolina Hurricanes.
What's funny is the fact in that game 5 clincher against Carolina, the goal that they scored was the empty net goal in the third period, and it was like maybe that's a sign that everything is going to get better for them, and it hasn't. Even though everybody else again around them scored tonight, it didn't help in the final result.
No, it did not.
As the Hurricanes lose yet again at home to start a series. All right. Then we have the Vegas Golden Knights, who Anthony hates playoff seeding. He's going to love this. He had 39 wins this season. There are 5 teams in the Eastern Conference who missed the playoffs with 40 wins or more. Tell you how a regular season works in there. And after long series that went to 6 with the 92-point Utah Mammoth and the 92-point Anaheim Ducks, all they needed was that breath of fresh air and the ease of the President's Trophy 121-point team, Colorado Avalanche, as an opponent to get that simple 4-game sweep and to get the Knights back to semi-familiar territory. And now they are up 1-0. Anthony, Vegas will earn their 2nd Stanley Cup title in 4 years and seal the deal and just keep titles in Vegas. They love doing it with the Aces. Why not do it with the Golden Knights?
Right.
How will they win this Stanley Cup if?
Well, they had to play perfect. They didn't do it tonight. I mean, you fall behind 2 goals within the first 10 minutes of Game 1. That's definitely not a good start. But yes, one of the things they did, they had to find a way to match Carolina's 5-on-5. They were able to do that. They weathered the storm as far as the early storm, no pun intended, by getting the back-to-back goals, tying the game up. Shea Theodore, how big was that goal? And at least keep getting Vegas back in the game, because this could have been an absolute bludgeoning. Had the momentum just kind of powered on. The Hurricanes, as far as the puck possession is what they're at their best. 60% expected goals, like at 5-on-5, and Vegas had to match that. They also got used to being outshot. I mean, they were outshot tonight, 27-23, and at one point they were outshot 14-7. Halfway through this game, protecting the high danger area zones. Obviously, the first goal that was scored in this game by Nikolai Ehlers, who I thought we were going to have an all-time great game.
Right.
Ehlers, one of the Golden Knights got caught out of position, and it led to an odd-man rush and ended up to the first goal. They had to maximize the special teams. The Golden Knights 0 for 3 tonight in the power play. They got to get some production on their special teams. They converted 22% of the power plays in the postseason compared to Carolina's 12.5%. However, the Hurricanes penalty kill as shown tonight has been very good. They've been
Hmm.
count has been very good, very stingy. Um, and but the Golden Knights are going to have to take advantage of those power play opportunities. They may not get that many because Carolina, for the most part, have been a disciplined team and they don't give up many bad penalties. Rely on their star power, which Marner, Eichel, Dornfeld, a guy I talked about in a couple previous show and going into the Utah series, needing to step it up. But tonight they got it from the supporting cast. Theodore I just mentioned. Barbashev tied the game. William Carlson gave him the 3-2 lead. Brett Howden made it 4-3. Thomas Hurdle with the game winner with under 4 minutes left in the third period. But also what they did do tonight, and which I think is going to be very successful for them going into the series, is Solomon Frederick Anderson, who has been unbelievable going into this series. 92% save percentage, 1.4 for goals against. Get bodies in front of him, create chaos in the front of that net. Two other goals, they were able to get a body in front of Anderson, impede his vision, maybe get a tip in, play junk. The quote, Coach O'Ryan from the Mighty Ducks. Go after, banging the junk hockey, go after the rebounds, one shot, another, another, and another. And that's kind of what the Golden Knights are gonna have to do. You're gonna have to play two-way hockey, but you're gonna have to play what they call garbage hockey too. Basically banging the junk. No stale bagels needed for this demonstration. But you get the idea of being able to get the rebounds and trying to get extra shots on net. And they scored a one-goal game tonight. They're going to have to continue to attack Anderson, get bodies in front, but also take advantage of those high-power pressure situations. Hurl's game winner was literally right in front of the net on a great pass to set up the one-timer. Those are the plays they're going to have to continue doing. Going into game two, they're going to have to clean up a lot defensively. I mean, the Golden Knights, they'll take the 1-0 seriously, obviously, but there's a lot they're going to have to really, really clean up. Carolina has just really been too good this entire postseason. And it's going to be a long series. I really expect that.
Sure is. And I believe that's 7 in a row now, by the way, for the Vegas
Yes,
Golden
7-game
Knights,
win streak
which
for the
is
Golden
insane
Knights.
considering. By the way, the villains of the NHL, Torts is their coach. What they're doing with their old coach to the Edmonton Oilers, blocking him to being interviewed with the Edmonton Oilers and Bruce Cassidy, who led them to their last Stanley Cup, by the way. Carter Hart's pass, by the way, I do have to give Carter Hart some credit after giving up those first 2 goals in the first period, kind of settling down a little bit the rest of the way. Here's a guy who's only started 34 games this year, and he's basically will end up starting more playoff games than he started in the regular season. Right now, it's 18-16. He was under siege, but he did a damn good job coming out after that barrage. And I have to say, Vegas, love him or hate him, but they get the job done more often than not. And right now, this team is 3 wins away from another chalice raising, possibly in Las Vegas, if they can just continue on the roll that they have had. Now, programming note. When we do these X Factors, which was the task that I gave myself in this, we moved this show back a day. We moved the show back a day just for production reasons and other stuff. So I had made my predictions way before this show aired. It just happened to be that my X Factor scored the first 3 goals in game 1 because my X Factor for the Carolina Hurricanes, yes, everybody scored a goal in this game, but Nicholas Ayers scored the first 2 goals and became the first person to do it in a Stanley Cup game 1 since 1989, and good old Al McGinnis, Mr. Hardship himself of the St. Louis Blues. He's had a good postseason he's the guy on the third line. He's there with Stankoven and Jordan Stahl, who also scored a goal tonight, by the way, in his first Stanley Cup in 17 years. But Ehlers had the goal that won them the game 2 in the Stanley Cup Conference Finals against Montreal. He's a hard-hitting shot boy. He is Denmark's all-time leader in goals with 251, assists with 340. He's at 591 points in 756 games. This is his first year with the Hurricanes. He played his first 10 seasons in Winnipeg. He has been a beast out there, and tonight he just really lit the lamp early on, getting himself the first 2 goals of this game, scoring the third fastest goal in Stanley Cup history. I think the last one was back in like the 70s, I think with the Flyers in 1979. Scored again with 12:08 in the first period. Had a great game. The third line is not what is the issue, obviously. Jay kind of mentioned it with the first line. But they need to get production from everywhere, and Ehlers has just been doing the trick for them all postseason long. I think that's one of the things that helped this team in this run. But Ehlers is good on the mid-range. Ehlers is 6th among forwards this postseason offensive time percentage going into this game, 48.9. Carolina, who is not great on the power play, by the way. That's one of their biggest issues. They only scored 7 goals in the power play this entire postseason. Significant edge at 5-on-5, but Ehlers is the guy that does the job. He had 12 go-ahead goals in the regular season. Seth Jarvis, a guy who we talked about a bunch of times, led the team with 14. But we'll see what happens with Carolina going forward, especially with Ehlers. Shea Theodore, it helps having experience in the defensive line. And Shea Theodore had the first goal, as Anthony said, for the Vegas Golden Knights tonight. Ended up with 2 assists tacked onto it. So a 3-point night for Theodore. He's just an offensive puck mover. Alex Pietrangelo is not on this has not been with this team this year, so his role has shifted heavily. He has been the shutdown option along with Brady McNabb. He's crushed the role the entire season. In the playoffs, he leads all players with a plus 3.1 defensive rating, driven by 1.8 expected goals against per 60 and 1.5 goals against per 60. Cale Makar is only better. He got that unceremoniously bounced in the conference finals, but Cale Makar is only better amongst defensemen. And Theodore has 11 points in 16 games. That is tied for 4th among defensemen, and he doesn't play on the top power play unit where defensemen will get most of their shots. So he was with that team in 2022-23, had 1 goal, 12 assists in the run to the Stanley Cup in 21 playoff games. That's just one season after scoring a career high 52 points in 78 regular season games. The guy is going to be a Golden Knight for a long time. He signed a 7-year contract at the beginning of last year. He's the franchise leader in scoring among defensemen with 296. He has a silver medal in the Winter Olympics in 2026. Shea Theodore is just an assassin, really on a team full of assassins in Vegas. And it's going to be interesting to see how this team responds. Anthony said it perfectly. They didn't play the perfect game in game 1. Honestly, you win a game 1 in any series, I don't care how perfect you play. You could fall on your face, and it doesn't matter to me. Get the W, and then play with the most house of money in game 2. And it's a must-win game for Carolina going back on Thursday night.
Yes, sir.
All right. So let us get into the final portion of our show and put on the figurative homer cap. Here it is. Cut it down. All right. I truly have to admit, when watching all of the celebrations happening on the streets of Manhattan, every time the Knicks have been winning, screw it, I'll put this back on. They've done a lot of that lately, by the way. You might think it's crazy as an outsider. But as a Knicks fan who has been suffering, and some who have been longer suffering, I say, let them eat cake and imbibe in everything under the sun while doing it, which they have been. So I just want to let you know, people there, that I'm here for you. And with the levels of suffering for Knicks fans, I'm just going to put an oral history of the failures of the Knicks and the struggles of the Knicks into 5 categories. So listen up. Category 1, those who've been there before. For our OGs and Knicks fans, Jay Kaplan is an OG, but we're talking about Steve Ferguson and Pedro Hazel Jr. They've seen the Knicks get to the mountaintop, albeit at a very, very young age. I hope you were alive then, guys. I'm sorry if you're not. I didn't ask you your age before that, whatever. Never thinking you'll see the replay. I figured they are. I figured they were. I just wanted to make sure. Never thinking.
And their memories of those 2 championship games of that late 60s, early 70s era is that they will have definitive memories whereas I do not.
That's fine. It's no speaking of them, never thinking that they'll see replication of that again. Sure, they saw 6 playoff appearances after that between 78 and 85, when you got nothing like the stretch of 1969 to 1973, where at minimum the Knicks went to a game 7 in the conference finals. I can go further, but you don't necessarily know what you don't 100% see. Now to category 2, those who saw the Ewing era. No matter how many frozen envelopes or ping pong balls that were involved in getting the Georgetown product back in 1985, and while getting a generational talent, it meant that the ceiling was the roof for many Knicks fans. Though I'm getting angry saying that because it was Jordan's Bulls that always ended the fun. 1989 was Rick Pitino's first MSG tour as Knicks head coach, and Rookie of the Year Mark Jackson lost to the Bulls in 6 of the conference semis. 1991 lost in 3, back when the NBA was still best of 5 in the first round with an interim head coach. 1992, Game 7 loss in the conference semifinals. 1993, a Game 6 loss in the conference finals, as I can see Charles Smith missing another 25 point-blank shots. And oh yeah, the ultimate FU as Michael Jordan's first full season back, they lose to the Bulls in 5 in the conference semifinals. 5 times, 8 seasons. New York season was ended by Chicago. Oh yeah, and there was that one season where there was no MJ at all, and it came to the worst of them all. Sure, the Knicks got past Scottie Pippen's Bulls and Reggie Miller's Pacers at Game 7s at home, but in 1994 came the NBA Finals versus the Rockets, and whether it was a Game 5 win at home in which something other than basketball captivated the entire nation, a Game 6 in where John Starks also missed another 25 point-blank shots, or a Game 7 that seemed fait accompli, even though the Knicks only lost by 6, 1994 seemed like the one that got away. Tailor-made for the Knicks, but a distant memory. After that, it was the new flavor in front of them, the Miami Heat, the still kicking Indiana Pacers. Or you had the miracle run to the finals back in 1999, but there was the cold water. That it was the first full year of the twin towers of Tim Duncan and David Robinson of the Spurs in the NBA Finals, reminding us that the Knicks were so close, but yet so far away. And while this was going to be a rant and essay on how the Knicks world was upside down post-2000, these next 2 categories seem like a blur to me, so I'm going to make sure I finish this up quickly. The decade of the 2000-2009 season is rough, and those fans that remember go into category number 3, whether it be to a 5-game loss to the upstart Raptors in round 1 to start the decade, or the 0 playoff wins to finish the decade. This decade fucking sucked. Let's face it. And before I remember that Don Chaney, Herb Williams, Lenny Wilkins, Larry Brown, Isaiah Thomas, and Mike D'Antoni were coaches during this time, let's move on. Now for category number 4, the 2010s fans. And while the offseason acquisition of Amari Stoudemire and very hefty asset giving away grab of Carmelo Anthony in 2010-11 is notable in getting the train in the right direction, it still got derailed before it left Penn Station very quickly. Despite the talent that included a Defensive Player of the Year in Tyson Chandler, a 6th Man of the Year in J.R. Smith, there was only a 3-year playoff window and a total of 7 playoff victories. Not playoff series victories, playoff victories in total. Then let's get back to 2014 and 2020. Here we go, more coaching roulette. Derek Fisher, Kirk Rambis, Jeff Hornacek, David Fizdale, even interim head coach Mike Miller. That was a thing. And opening night starters such as Sasha Vujacic, Ramon Sessions, Courtney Lee, Trey Burke, Lance Thomas, Frank Ntilikina, and Alonzo Trier. Jesus Christ, we were in hell. All right, now time for category 5. And now, in what actually started with a hella motivated Julius Randle and an albeit shortened 41-31 season that got the Knicks back into the postseason. Of course, the next season seemed like a fade to the norm, 37-45. But guess what? That's when the best free agent signing in New York sports history happened. Fight me on this. Jalen Brunson signing in the 2022 offseason, and then the progression began. Playoffs, series victory in 22-23, another series victory, get to the Game 7, the next season the conference finals, and now an NBA Finals and possible championship. If you've only joined now, I will give smack you later. but we will forgive you, and your fandom will be up for review by the Knicks board in the offseason. Let's be honest. Now that I just went through the 5 stages of grief slash categories, I hope you could really stand that Knicks fans have really gone through a lot. And kind of looking into it, I sowed a little self reflection myself. Now it's time to see, Anthony, if 53 years of waiting pays off in a chip over the next 2 weeks. Go, Ant.
Uh, I would say this, for us long-suffering Knicks fans, if you're on the outside of New York, and I've seen there's plenty of Knicks haters on social media, they've made their voices heard. You're not going to ruin this moment for us. We have went through bad trades, bad signings, bad coaching, a sexual harassment suit that took place in 2007. We have been through a ton in the last 2 decades to finally be able to be proud to be a Knicks fan. This now, like, Grant, there was no guarantee that this postseason run would happen. I mean, we went from Tom Thibodeau, who got the Knicks to the conference final for the first time in 25 years. Um, we went from Tom Thibodeau to Mike Brown, and a lot of people questioned the move at the time. And even at some points this year, the Knicks winning and the Knicks actually winning one more game than they did last season. There were doubts. There was the lengthy losing streak after winning the NBA Cup. There were other contenders like the Pistons and the Celtics that kind of emerged in the Eastern Conference with Jason Tatum miraculously coming back um, from his torn Achilles. And it's not even the fact that the Knicks and a lot of people picked the Knicks to lose to the Atlanta Hawks in the first round, and seeing the Knicks go on this run as a fan has been fun. It has been exciting, but more importantly, seeing the city rally behind this team. And yeah, we've seen the celebrations outside Madison go on the last 2 years, and we've seen a lot of these things, and we've seen a lot of Knicks fans kind of be happy to represent their team again. It reminded me of the Yankees from the early '90s, and a lot of young kids out there don't remember the Yankees were really at rock bottom. And 1989, 1990, Jay, you remember obviously you was around during those dark years, and
Yes,
the
sir.
the progression of what the Yankees became in the '90s started in 1993. I mean, think about this. One of the best moments of that year was Jim Albert's no hitter, and you saw that the Yankees just did miss the playoffs. And like the Blue Jays were at the peak of their powers. They were going on their way to another back-to-back. And then you saw how good the Yankees can potentially be, except the strike ruined the '94 season. And the Yankees was in first place at that time. '95, and then you saw '95. They make the playoffs. Don Mally's only postseason appearance, but there was a young player by the name of Derek Jeter sitting on that bench, being the first guy to come out and congratulate whoever scored a run. And from that point on, you saw the seeds of that Yankee dynasty being built. No, I'm not saying the Knicks are gonna be a dynasty. I don't want you to get too far ahead of me now. But
Don't,
when
don't, don't get over your skis just yet, Knicks
yes,
fans.
but yes, Julius Randle he should get his flowers because he was the guy that wanted to come to the Knicks. He was the guy that got motivated and became an all-star his first season with the Knicks, his first full season. And the Knicks made the playoffs. I bet it was short. They lost to the Atlanta Hawks with Trey Young. Ironically enough, this postseason run started beating the Atlanta Hawks. Trey Young off to Washington and has not been the same player since that playoff series. And then we saw the regression the next year, but Jalen Brunson, the signing at that time, I think even the most optimistic fan did not see what he would become, but also him being the foundation of a culture that the Knicks desperately did not have in the last 2 decades. And you saw the the small little moves being made. Um, you saw the trades to OG Anunoby. You saw Mikal Bridges and draft picks be damned. And does anybody complain about those draft picks now?
Hmm.
You saw the Josh Hart trade. Remember the video of Jalen Brunson uh, seeing that, realizing that he's going to be reunited with his college teammate and running buddy from Villanova.
Also
Um,
reminding us that he only won one championship while him and McHale
yes.
won two championships at the post press conference after game four.
But also think about Mitchell Robinson being really that last hangover from that dark period. He was being a second round draft pick, the trade of Karl Anthony Towns, and you're seeing, and the Knicks gave away a beloved player, Emmanuel, quickly because they were confident in what they saw in Deuce McBride and being a key piece to what could be a winning team. And you saw these other guys come in. Landry Shamet, a veteran presence who could defend, who was sorely missed last season because of the shoulder injury. You saw kind of the melting pot, but I also think Mike Brown's. And I think you saw. Did anybody see him singing "Who the Dogs Out"? Leave the
Yeah,
dogs out.
yes, I
Once
did. Yes,
again,
I did. Yes,
I
I did.
think Mike Brown's more lighthearted, even carol personality might have, I think, kept the Knicks loose during the tough times. But also his willingness to change his game plan and deviate from what's not working. That was one of the biggest criticisms of Tom Thibodeau, and his willingness to stay the course regardless if it was working or not, as opposed to Mike Brown. Maybe Thibodeau doesn't take Josh Hart out and go to Landry Shamet in that game one comeback win. Maybe he doesn't play his bench and guys like Haporti, Dianawa, and Kolick, and Jose Alvarado chip in and contribute with their minutes. And also, and maybe, Tim's doesn't change the offense, something that Mike Brown was willing to do, and run it through quality talents and maximize his potential. But when you walk through the city, and obviously there's still 4 wins away, we don't know what the series is going to be like. But as a fan who was 16 when the Knicks last made it to the World Series, I mean made it to the NBA Finals, I remember taking a train ride to Madison Square Garden and seeing that giant "I Still Believe" poster that was hanging outside of MSG during the '99 Finals. And it's kind of poetic because you still had to believe in your team for 2 decades, through all the good and through all the bad, the craziness that was going on, the fire Dolan chance, the fire Isaiah, Charles Oakley getting into a fist fight with guard security on national television. There was so many things that gave this franchise a black eye. Um, and to now see this 180. Dolan handing out game balls to kids at the Knicks games. We never see that. To see fans actually celebrating, to walk down the street and see people wearing Knicks gear. I didn't see that since the '90s. I used to see fans of everyone else because they had something to cheer for. Um, think about this. When the Knicks last won a championship, my oldest brother was 2 months away from being born, 1973. So that just tells you how generations of a fan base that has suffered since being on top has had to go through, and we're finally getting an opportunity to maybe complete the mission. And again, the job's not done. To quote the late Kobe
Nope.
Bryant, still 4 more wins. Um, and I say this, and of course I want my team to win, regardless of how this series goes. As a Knicks fan, to be proud of this team, to bleed the orange and blue skies. We didn't think moments like this would come again. If you flash back 5, 6 years ago, and to be in this position now, savor the moment, take it all in, and You know what? You know, we got 12 down, 4 to go. Let's go Knicks.
All right, take us home, Joey.
Those who follow the show as well, those who know me in life, know I've been a diehard Philadelphia 76ers fan since the days of Dr. J, Julius Irving. But as a born and raised New Yorker who grew up in a family of Knicks fans, I've suffered through some of the same things you guys have. These are the ones that have left a painful, lasting impact on me. The cursed Bernard King era in the earlier part of the 1980s, followed by the wandering in the NBA wilderness era in the latter part of the 1980s. Michael Jordan, all of it throughout the 90s, but especially Charles Smith in Game 5 of the 95 Eastern Conference Finals. That one really irked me. Reggie Miller and the choke after he exploded for 25 points in the fourth quarter of Game 5 of the 94 East semis. John Starks going 2 for 19 in Game 7 of the 94 finals against the Rockets, and Pat Riley doing nothing about it. Patrick Ewing missing the finger roll in Game 7 of the 95 East semis against the Pacers, and the whole 1999 finals loss to a Spurs team led by a dominant big man in Tim Duncan. Something Knicks fans are hoping won't be repeated against the 2026 version of the San Antonio Spurs and their own dominant big man. I've left the pain and suffering of this new century to my two colleagues here, as it scarred them much more than it has me. And while a Knicks championship in 2025-26 may not match the level of unadulterated joy I felt when Doc and Moses Malone led the Sixers to the NBA title in 1982-83 from a purely basketball fandom standpoint, if Jalen Brunson is lifting the Larry O'Brien trophy by the time it's all said and done on June 10th or earlier, from the standpoint of a proud New Yorker, it most definitely will.
Amen to that. Amen to that. By the way, 2 of 18 for Starks. Don't give him another miss. I'm still just horrified about the whole thing. Anyway, let's get those battle wounds off. Let's go Knicks. And I'll just say for Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, I'm Steve Rabinowitz. 2 things. I'm about to go ask for a small business loan to get myself into Game 3, 4, or 6 of the NBA Finals. Go find
Good
my
luck.
GoFundMe. But also, shout out to the Sacramento Kings fans there. You're either going to see the coach that started last year with you win an NBA title, or see one of your star players of the 2020s win an NBA title in the next 2 weeks. Salute to you, Sacramento, and all the shit you continuously
By the
go
way,
through.
I hate to cut you off. I have to do one more. Happy birthday to my mom, Miss Sharon. She turned
Yeah.
Happy birthday,
75
Miss Sharon.
in about
75
13
tomorrow,
minutes.
right? 75 tomorrow,
Yes.
yes.
75 tomorrow. She is a bigger Knicks fan than I am. You've not had the joy of watching the games with her when she's constantly yelling at the TV. But she is ready for the NBA Finals. I jokingly asked her what she wanted to do, and she almost looked at me with a death stare, like, "Are you serious?" But yeah, yes, happy birthday, Mom.
I guess Miss Sharon's not going out to a Broadway play tomorrow. That's for damn sure.
No.
Anyway, again, you can again contribute to my GoFundMe. I mean, like and subscribe on demand at youtube.com/onthesportslines and facebook.com/onthesportslines. Let me go to my couch cushions and scrounge for a few dollars. JX.
Our Twitter handle is at ONTH Sportslines, where you'll find a link to each new show like tonight's, along with tidbits and nuggets from the world of sports that we think are worth your time to check out. This week, I've posted a link to a story by Andrew Marchand of The Athletic about Mike Breen, the local kid from Yonkers who rooted for Walt Frazier and the Knicks and then grew up to become the voice of the team, partnering with Frazier on the call of their games. Now, as he gets ready for his 21st NBA Finals for ESPN, Breen will be following in the footsteps of Marv Albert, another New York Knicks broadcasting legend, calling an NBA Finals involving the hometown team. It's a very well done piece, and the read is very much worth your time, especially if you're a long-suffering, diehard Knicks fan of a certain age, like Mike Breen, who has been waiting for this moment since the last time a high-scoring point guard led the basketball tenants of MSG to the promised land.
All right, we'll talk to you next week. Until then, good night. Enjoy
everybody.
the finals. Enjoy the finals for both Cup and basketball.